guys, and welcome to my channel. My name is Melissa Joyce, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today we are going to be talking about a product that I received in my January Ipsy bag, and that is this Temptu primer. This is not my first time talking about a Temptu product. I received one, I want to say maybe about 3 months ago in my BoxyCharm subscription, and that was this Temptu shimmer bronzer. We'll include a card for that closer to the end of this if you want to go back and watch that review. But just as a little catch up, I actually really enjoyed this. This is the first and only liquid bronzer that I've used, and the shade is really nice. It works really well. I will say that I don't use it as much as I probably should, just because if I'm getting ready in the morning, I tend to do my foundation or my BB cream and then powder and then think about bronzer. And at that point, it's a little bit past when I can use this if I've already put my powder on. But this is really good. So when I saw the primer come, which you can see is a sample size compared to this large one, in my January Ipsy bag, I thought, okay, of the one Temptu product that I've tried, I really liked it. So I am curious to try this one and see how it does. This product is a smooth and matte primer, so it is going to smooth out your pores, smooth out your texture, and also provide mattifying effect through the day. So let's get on a little bit to the review. What I'm going to do today is a bit of a first impression and wear test, but before we get into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the company and a little bit about the product. So Temptu is best known for their airbrush product. I think there are actually very few of their products that aren't related to their airbrush system. Basically, it's a at-home airbrush makeup system where you load different pods into it. You can do your foundation, you can do blush, you can do highlight. They have something for doing your brows. They have something for doing the roots of your hair in between coloring. And I've watched, since doing my last review, I've watched a number of reviews of people using the airbrush system, and it generally gets pretty good reviews from the YouTubers that I've watched who have used it. It is a low, or it's not full coverage, it's very light coverage, but it is very luminous. It is very natural, and people really seem to like it. They say it takes a little bit of getting used to, but it does provide a beautiful finish. Although a lot of people say that while it really does a beautiful look for them, they can't really imagine firing it up every day to use it. So it's more of a special occasion product. So Temptu does have a number of airbrush products you can use on your own without the airbrush system. There is the shimmer bronzer, there is the primer, and then there is some lipstick that they have as well. Oh, and they also have some concealers, lip gloss, and some finishing powder and shimmer that is also not loaded into the airbrush system. So one of the comments that was made from one of the YouTubers that I watched when they were using the actual airbrush system is that it is very, very luminous when you put this on. And I think possibly, I'm just making a guess here, what happened is that they found that because it's a very luminous formula, that people who have issues with oil were having some issues with that oil starting to come through the day. They only have one primer that they've made, and it is this smooth and matte primer, and they do talk about using it with their airbrush system. So I think it is specifically formulated to address some of the issues that people might have when they're using the Temptu airbrush system. This is obviously a sample of the product. This is 0.25 fluid ounces. If you buy the full-size product, you are going to get 1 fluid ounce, and it is going to cost you $35 American, which is not out of line for high-end primers. My favorite primer, which is also a mattifying primer but also with anti-acne properties, is from Smashbox, and it is close to that price. Probably in Canadian dollars, it's about like 38 or 40. This is a half-size sample of it, but it means that it's a pretty comparable price to some higher-end primers that you would get at Sephora or something like that. So if it works really well, it's not really out of line with other primers that also are smoothing and mattifying. Their claims on the website is that this is a perfect canvas formula, and it tells you that it is going to combat shine, that it is going to smooth your skin, that it is going to make it poreless, and that it is going to help your makeup last all day. So those are what they say this product is going to do for you. Now, when you buy the full size of this, it looks very different than this bottle does. This is the full size of the shimmer bronzer, and you can see the bottles look very similar, but when you actually buy the full size of the primer, it comes in more of sort of a squeezy tube bottle, but there is actually a built-in brush on the end. And I'm not sure how much of that is kind of gimmicky. There's a little video on the website you can watch about how to use it, because there is basically a brush tip on the end that almost looks like a flat brush. You turn the top of it and that opens it, and then you squeeze enough to get a pea-sized amount and then twist it back again, which stops the product from dispensing. And then I guess use the brush that's on the end of this container to brush it on over your face. I'm not sure how that makes it any better than using your own brush or using your fingers, as I tend to do when I put on primer. It also makes me wonder how easy it is for you to take off the brush from the container in order to wash it. I think I would prefer to probably have a brush that I could clean fairly easily than have it attached to the container. So those are just my thoughts about that. I don't know if they're trying to make it a bit more of a gimmicky thing, or it could be that what they're trying to do is pair it with an airbrush system where you don't need any extra tools besides what Temptu provides to you if you're going to do full makeup with their look. So you've got this primer, the brush built in, you could do that, and then you've got your airbrush, you can do that, and you don't need any kind of extra beauty blenders or brushes or anything like it. But it does feel a little gimmicky. As I said, I'd rather use my fingers than a built-in brush. That is everything that I have to tell you about the company and about the product. So let's get on to putting this on my face and then putting my makeup on over top of it and then going on through the day. Okay, I will see you soon. My face has been washed and moisturized, and I've given a bit of time for that moisturizer to sink in. Sorry if I sound a little gritty. It feels early. It's not that early, but it feels early. And let's get to priming half of my face. So because I don't have the brush applicator for this, I am going to use my Vasanti brush, which seems to be like the closest sort of flat brush comparison that I have. And it says on the actual product to dispense a pea-sized amount, so I'm going to try to use a little bit less than that because I'm only doing half of my face. And they all come in this sort of bottle. Let's see how this goes. You know what? I'm going to shake it first. Oh, and there's a shaker ball in there. Do I put it right onto the brush? Sure. There it is on the brush. And I'm going to prime this side of my face and not the other side. I'm going to focus on my T-zone, but it also everywhere because of the pore minimizing. It feels very lightweight. I mean, I think it dispersed quite well, even with that small amount all over my whole face. One of the things about using a brush is that it feels like the brush absorbs a little bit of it. I don't know if they have a brush that doesn't do that as much in the actual product. I wouldn't usually touch my face after putting on a primer, but I'm just going to do that to see how it feels. It doesn't really feel tacky or anything, it just feels nicely moisturized. There doesn't really seem to be any smell to it, maybe a little bit of a chemical fresh sort of smell, if that makes sense, but nothing that you actually smell unless you are sniffing the product itself. You don't smell it when it's going on your face. It doesn't feel tight, it doesn't feel like oily or anything like that, it just feels very lightweight. I think that is everything I have to say from first impression of putting it on. For me, I usually let my primers sit for about 10 minutes, then sort of set a little bit before I put the rest of my foundation or my BB cream, whatever I'm going to be using, on my face. I tend to put on my moisturizer, like wash my face, do my moisturizer, make sure I wait at least 10 minutes before I do a primer. Because I like the skincare and the moisturizer to have a chance to sink in. And then with the primer, I tend to leave them again for about 10 minutes if I can, depending on how much time I have in the morning, so that they have a chance to sort of set to my skin as well before I start putting foundation on top. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to put my makeup on, and then I will be back to let you know any first impressions that I see from makeup applying on top of this primer. So it is currently 7:45 in the morning. By the time I put my makeup on and everything, it'll be 8 o'clock. So we'll say that this went on at 7:45 because it did, and I will see you in a moment. My makeup is on. Everything went on top of both sides perfectly fine. I ended up using the e.l.f. BB cream, which I did find if I didn't use a matte primer with it and the Stay Matte powder would get shiny by the end of the day. I want to have the chance to see what this primer is actually doing. So what I did was I put on the e.l.f. primer with a beauty blender. I did the side first without the primer on it so that none of the primer would transfer to the other side. So I did that side first, and then I used the beauty blender to go on the side that does have the primer. And I did not do my usual like pretty heavy pressing of Rimmel Stay Matte powder because I didn't want the powder to be what kept me matte all day. I wanted to see what exactly the primer was doing. So I did a very light dusting of the Rimmel Stay Matte powder, which made it a little harder to blend sort of my bronzer and blush just because it ended up being not a powder layer I was blending on top of, but that was the same on both sides. That wasn't the fault of the primer. I did find that I did notice a small pore minimizing effect on the side with the primer. So that was nice to see, especially in this area right here, which I think is where I first put the product down. So I think if you were using this and probably pressed the product in a bit more all around the area where you have pores, for me, that's here, it would do more of a pore filling effect because I did find that it did that. So when I put on blush and when I put on a little bit of highlighter, I noticed pores were a little bit more noticeable on the side without the primer than the side with the primer. So far so good. I will do some check-ins through the day as much as I can. And then I will be back here at the end of the day to see how everything's holding up. Okay, see you soon. Hi guys, it is check-in time. It is 1:57, so basically 2 o'clock. So about 6 hours after I put on this primer and foundation, BB cream, and I have not had a super strenuous day. I was doing a few things around the house, and then I went out for lunch with some friends, and I maybe walked about like 10-15 minutes to get to where I was going and 10-15 minutes back again in the cold. And I looked at my foundation and primer before I left, and I was looking shiny before I left. And I don't know that you can see it that much on the screen now, but I am shiny, like shiny here and especially here. So let me zoom in and see if we can see it a little bit. I think that takes away the blur if I zoom in. So there's a sheen on my forehead as well as all here by my nose. And to be quite honest, it looks exactly the same on both sides of my face. If anything, I would say, if I had to guess, just like by the tiniest minute details, which side maybe had a mattifying primer on it, I'd probably guess the other side because I feel like this side looks a hair shinier. So I don't think it's doing much mattifying, at least not with this product that I'm testing it with today. What I am going to do now, because at this point if I don't do anything, I'm just going to get shinier through the rest of the day. I don't tend to use blotting papers. I don't actually have any. If I get shiny in the day and I have brought a powder with me, I'll powder my face a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do is evenly powder both sides of my face with my Rimmel Stay Matte, and then at my last check-in today we'll see if both sides of my face are performing exactly the same, because if so, then my first impression of this primer is not going to be that it's doing a lot for mattifying. But that's what I'll do now, and I will check in with you guys a bit later. Bye. Okay guys, it is exactly 5 o'clock and I am calling it for today for this experiment. I don't look as shiny right now as I did when I got back from lunch, although I really look like I need some lip color. Everything has stayed fairly matte since I put the mattifying powder on at about 2 p.m. But neither side of my face looks any different than the other. So I don't see where this really did any kind of mattifying with the look that I had going on today with the products that I was using. I did find it looked like there was a little bit of pore minimization when I was first doing my makeup. I mean, it felt fine and everything, but if it's going to be mattifying, I didn't see that happening. So that was my first impression. What I am going to do is, I have a few days before I'm going to post this video, so I'm going to do some more testing with it and try it out with a few different things, and I will be back to give you my final thoughts on this product. Future Melissa will be back to give you her final thoughts on this product. Thank you so much for watching this through the day today. See you soon. It is a few days later, and I am here to give you my final thoughts on this Temptu primer. I've been using it over the last number of days in a number of different ways, different applications, different foundation over top. I've been trying as much as possible to do half face and half face with the primer, half face with no primer, just to see how the differences are, because I really was rooting for this to work. So I knew if I had used it all over my face, as I've actually done today, that I would be looking for things and attributing it to the primer. And I don't want to do that. I want to give you my thoughts on what the primer did. As I said, I really wanted this to work. I really enjoyed the Temptu Shimmer Bronzer so much that I thought this was going to be just as awesome a product. There are some pros to this product, but unfortunately, I think it might be a pass for me. So the pros of this are that it goes on really nicely. It's very smooth. It doesn't mess with any of your makeup underneath. It didn't look like my makeup was going on cakey over top of it or anything like that. It does provide some pore filling properties. Now, what I found when I was using it is you would see in that first impression that I first tried to apply it with a brush, because the full size of this comes with that brush applicator. What I've been doing since then is putting it on with my fingers as I would normally do with a primer. And what I tend to do is use it in a very smoothing motion on most of my face, except where I tend to have pores, which is kind of right here. I pat it in first, because that patting motion sort of pushes it a little bit more into the pores for more pore filling. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit to look at my makeup today. I am trying to figure out how to get this blurring filter off of my camera, but if I zoom in, it tends to go away. So for me, I usually get pores right around here, and it actually does a fairly good job of filling them. I will say, however, that most of the primers that I try, if they even have a slight bit of pore filling to them, they perform about the same as this. So while it does do some of that pore filling and it definitely does smoothing, it doesn't necessarily do it more than other products that I've tried. As far as being a mattifying primer, I just didn't see it. I tried this with the BB cream, as you saw. I tried it with my Rimmel BB cream. I tried it with my L'Oreal True Match, which is kind of my go-to foundation, and I did a half face of primer for all of them and a half face without primer, and I saw absolutely, well, I didn't see any difference in the mattifying. If I really looked, I feel like maybe the side without the primer got a tiny bit shinier, but I also feel like I was really trying to find where this was making a difference. And for it being a, higher priced primer, I mean, it's definitely not drugstore, it didn't make enough of a difference for me to suggest that you go out and try this. I will say that this is made to be used with their Temptu airbrush products. As I do not have their Temptu airbrush products, I didn't get a chance to try that, as this was given to me as a sample in a Ipsy bag. But it could be that this is very well formulated to provide that kind of pore filling and mattifying effect with their foundation over top of it. It seems like they only have the one primer, so they could have made this primer specifically to address some issues that their foundation product has. So I would say buying this as a standalone product without having any of the other Temptu products is probably a pass. You could find other primers that do similar things for less money, or you could find primers that perform better for the same amount of money if you're looking for pore filling, if you're looking for mattifying. But if you are somebody who uses a Temptu airbrush product and you are finding that you are getting shiny, if you're finding that it shows your pores, this might be a product for you to try because it is made specifically to use with those products. So that is my review. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any thoughts or want to share anything or ask any questions, just leave them in the comments. I respond to every comment. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a big thumbs up. And if you have not subscribed, please consider doing so. I will see you again soon with another review. Have a great day. Bye.